The twin suns of Zarkoth glared down mercilessly on the sprawling desert city, turning the sand streets of the Bazaar into a shimmering, almost blinding expanse. Vendors from dozens of planets had set up stalls in every alley and corner, their goods shining under the heat, crystal orbs that floated in midair, mechanical pets that chirped and blinked, foods that shimmered with colors no human had ever seen. The air was filled with a chaotic mixture of smells, spices, metallic tangs, sweet alien fruits, and the occasional pungent aroma of exotic meats. Amid the chaos, a human moved carefully but confidently. He was tall, wiry, with sharp eyes that darted from stall to stall, noticing things others missed, the way a merchant adjusted a balance scale, the small markings on a piece of cloth, or the faint hum of a gadget that looked useless at first glance. Humans were rare on Zarkoth. Their reputation for curiosity and quick thinking had preceded them, even among species far stronger than they were. But many of the locals still considered humans fragile. The human's name was Jalen. He had heard stories about the Bazaar, about its endless dangers and opportunities. Traders who underestimated a customer often lost much more than credits. Sometimes, a poorly timed insult or a careless glance could start a fight. Yet Jalen moved with a calm assurance that seemed almost out of place among the bustling chaos. His attention was drawn to a small vendor tucked between two enormous tented stalls. The vendor's wares were simple but curious, jars filled with glowing liquids, small mechanical birds, and folded sheets of metallic fabric that seemed to ripple in the air. Jalen smiled slightly as he stepped closer. It was a smile of polite curiosity, nothing more, but in a bazaar like this, even a small expression could have consequences. "Ah, a human," the vendor said in a sing-song voice, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly. "Curious creature. Curious indeed. Perhaps you wish to see my wares?" Jalen nodded. "Your items are unusual. I've never seen anything like them before." He bent down, picking up a small mechanical bird. Its wings fluttered softly as he examined it. "How does this work?" The vendor's eyes glimmered with pride. "Ah, simple mechanism. It responds to gestures and light. See?" He waved his multiple arms, and the bird hopped from Jalen's hand to the top of a shelf, spinning gracefully. Jalen's smile widened slightly. "Very clever. You've done excellent work." That was when trouble arrived, or rather, when it noticed him. From the shadowed corner of the bazaar came a low growl. Jalen turned just in time to see her. A Beastwoman. She was immense, her fur a dark bronze with streaks of silver that glimmered under the twin suns. Her eyes were a piercing amber, glowing faintly with intensity. Muscles rippled under her fur as she moved, and her claws, sharp and curved, scraped lightly against the stone-paved street. The bazaar seemed to shift subtly at her approach. Merchants froze, some muttered prayers, others quickly lowered the shutters on their stalls. The air itself seemed to tighten, as if even gravity acknowledged her presence. Jalen, however, remained calm, though his heart beat a little faster. Humans were not known for their strength among species like Beastwomen, but they did have other advantages: quick reflexes, intelligence, and unpredictability. The Beastwoman's gaze fell on Jalen. She was tall even by her species' standards. But it wasn't just her size that was intimidating. It was her aura of pride and unspoken authority. She stepped forward, each stride deliberate, scanning the human with suspicion. Jalen, not wanting to appear afraid, returned her gaze steadily. He offered a polite smile. Just a small, friendly gesture, nothing aggressive. But the Beastwoman's instincts misread it. In her culture, a smile in this context could be a challenge, a mockery, or even a declaration of dominance. For a moment, the bazaar held its breath. Then, without warning, she lunged. The motion was sudden and terrifyingly fast. Jalen barely. had time to duck before her powerful arms grabbed him and flung him across the street. He tumbled over crates, narrowly missing a stack of glowing jars that would have shattered into 100 sparkling shards. The wind left his lungs wheezing, and sand stung his skin, but somehow, by some miracle of human balance and quick reflexes, he landed on his feet. Merchants gasped, some cheering silently, others whispering in awe. A few young aliens whispered to each other, "Humans." They survived things that should have ended them instantly. The Beastwoman stopped a few feet away, her chest heaving slightly from the effort. She looked at Jalen, expecting fear or pain or even a grovel. Instead, he straightened his shoulders, brushed off dust, and gave her another small, calm smile. "Are you done?" he asked, voice steady. The Beastwoman blinked. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Most species would have cowered or fled. She frowned, confused, and a tiny growl escaped her throat, not of anger, but uncertainty. You survive?" she asked, incredulous. "I do," Jalen replied simply. "It's what humans do." There was a pause. The crowd of aliens watched silently, the tension thick. Then, slowly, a few merchants began to nod quietly, murmuring among themselves about the audacity of humans. To survive a throw from a Beastwoman, a feat that would have killed most species and then stand calmly smiling, it was remarkable. The Beastwoman stepped closer, circling him slowly. "You are bold," she said. "Most would not even try to stand against me." Jalen shrugged lightly. "I didn't try to stand against you. I just moved well enough to survive. That's all." She tilted her head, studying him. For the first time, the crowd saw her curiosity outweigh her anger. Her stance relaxed slightly, though her muscles remained tense, ready to strike if needed. "You are strange," she said finally. "Humans are fragile. Most die before they can even defend themselves. Yet, you stand, and you smile." Jalen chuckled softly. "It's what humans do. We face danger, we adapt, and we survive. Sometimes with cleverness, sometimes with luck. But mostly we just keep going." The Beastwoman's amber eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Her species valued strength above all else. Intelligence, wit, and resilience were admired, but rarely as much as raw power. Yet here was a human, small, fragile in appearance, and he had survived where others would have perished. "Perhaps you are different," she said finally, almost to herself. Jalen nodded. "Perhaps. And perhaps we can learn from each other. You have strength I cannot match. I have things that may surprise you." A small grin crept onto her face, just barely visible beneath the fur and intensity. It was not a smile of friendship yet, but it was not hostility either. Curiosity had taken root. The vendor, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. "Interesting," he murmured. "You, human, have survived a Beastwoman throw. Without injury. Remarkable. Truly remarkable." Jalen smiled again, this time at the vendor. "It was luck, perhaps, and a little skill." The Beastwoman growled softly, almost in amusement. Then, unexpectedly, she turned and walked back into the shadows of the bazaar, leaving Jalen to catch his breath. The crowd began to move again, whispering and pointing, their awe and curiosity buzzing in the air. Jalen shook his head lightly, adjusting his clothing. "This is going to be an interesting day," he muttered to himself. Little did he know, the Beastwoman was already planning her next move. Her pride had been challenged, her curiosity sparked. Humans were rare, unpredictable, and intriguing. The encounter at the bazaar was only the beginning. As the twin suns dipped slightly toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets, Jalen continued through the stalls. His eyes gleamed with curiosity, his mind already thinking of the gadgets, foods, and alien crafts he could explore next. and somewhere, hidden among the crowd, the Beastwoman's amber eyes followed him. Her thoughts tangled between suspicion, admiration, and an unspoken challenge. The bazaar was alive, chaotic, dangerous, and full of opportunity, and for a human willing to think fast and move smart, it was a playground. And so began a day that would test the limits of courage, wit, and strength in ways no one, human or beastwoman, could yet predict. The bazaar had returned to its usual rhythm, though whispers followed Jalen wherever he went. Merchants glanced at him with curiosity, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Alien shoppers slowed their steps, staring at the human who had survived. A beastwoman's throw. Children peeked from behind crates, wide-eyed and whispering excitedly about the strange, resilient human. Jalen adjusted the strap of his satchel, packed with trinkets, food, and a few small gadgets he had purchased earlier. His mind was already analyzing the events. The Beastwoman, strong, fast, and undeniably powerful, had thrown him with ease, yet he had landed unscathed. His reflexes, his balance, and the instinct to roll on impact had saved him. But more than that, he realized something important. The encounter had changed the way the crowd saw him. Humans, often underestimated, had a certain unpredictable quality. One could not predict how a human would act under pressure. Jalen smiled quietly to himself, knowing that subtle advantage would serve him well. As he walked, the ground beneath him vibrated slightly. The massive footsteps of the Beastwoman echoed, nearby, drawing attention once again. She was approaching, moving with deliberate pace, her eyes fixed on him like a predator studying prey. Yet there was no immediate aggression, only scrutiny. "You live," she said, her deep voice resonating, "in the narrow street. And you speak calmly. Most would scream, beg, or flee." Jalen met her gaze steadily. "I've learned that panic rarely helps. It slows thinking, it clouds judgment, and humans, we rely on judgment, even when things seem impossible." Beastwoman tilted her head, examining him as though she were trying to see beyond the skin and into the very essence of this strange creature. "Your survival? It puzzles me. Strength alone cannot explain it." Jalen shrugged lightly. "Sometimes it's not strength that matters. Sometimes it's speed, balance, awareness, a little luck too." Her amber eyes narrowed. She was a creature of instinct, pride, and experience. For centuries, her kind had relied on sheer power to dominate challenges. Few had ever matched her strength, and even fewer had survived direct confrontation. Yet, here was this human, small, seemingly fragile, and yet alive, confident, and smiling. "Perhaps humans are cleverer than I assumed," she muttered. Jalen's grin widened slightly. "You'll find we are in many ways." For a moment, they simply observed each other, the bustling bazaar around them fading into background noise. The air between them was thick with unspoken questions and cautious curiosity. The Beastwoman, despite her pride, was intrigued. Humans did not belong among the strongest species of the galaxy, yet here one stood, unbroken, unafraid, and alive. Then, unexpectedly, a loud crash echoed from a nearby stall. A pile of glowing jars tipped over, spilling their shimmering contents onto the sand. Merchants shouted, scrambling to save their goods. The human reacted instantly, springing forward and helping to catch falling jars before they shattered. The Beastwoman watched, her expression unreadable. The human did not hesitate, did not falter, and showed neither fear nor weakness. Even in the chaos, he moved with precision, anticipating danger and adjusting accordingly. "You move well," she commented quietly. "Not just surviving, but helping." Jalen glanced at her and offered a calm nod. "It helps to pay attention." Danger is everywhere in the bazaar. You can't just rely on strength. You need awareness, too. She blinked, considering his words. Awareness, skill, cunning, humans, strange. For the next hour, they moved through the bazaar side by side, though neither spoke much. The Beastwoman's presence was imposing. Even without aggression, she commanded attention. But she did not attack. Instead, she observed the human's reactions, how he judged distances, how he avoided potential hazards, and how he used his small size and agility to navigate tight spaces. At one point, a group of local thieves tried to snatch a glowing crystal from a vendor's stall. Before anyone could react, Jalen was on them. He dodged their swings, used the environment to his advantage, and disarmed one thief with a quick twist and push. The thieves fled, muttering curses, while the crowd whispered in astonishment. The Beastwoman's amber eyes widened slightly. This was not a display of physical dominance. She could have easily handled the thieves. But it was clever, precise, and effective. The human had used thinking, speed, and adaptability to achieve what sheer strength might have done clumsily. You use mind, not only body, she said, almost in awe. Jalen smiled faintly. Strength can be useful, but it's not everything. Humans learn quickly. We adapt. That's often more powerful than muscle. She growled softly, a low sound that seemed more contemplative than threatening. Her species valued strength, courage, and dominance. But she realized that humans had a different kind of power, one that could not be measured by muscle alone. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the bazaar, Jalen noticed the Beastwoman scanning the crowds, her posture alert. He followed her gaze and saw a group of massive alien merchants struggling to lift a heavy crate. Without thinking, he stepped forward to help, adjusting his balance and coordinating with their movements. The crate was lifted successfully, and the grateful merchants muttered thanks. The Beastwoman tilted her head, her expression shifting subtly. You do not fear. You act with confidence and skill. Most species panic or fail. Jalen shrugged, wiping dust from his hands. Fear slows you down. It's natural to be cautious, but courage isn't about being unafraid, it's about acting despite fear. Her amber eyes studied him closely. She had fought many battles, faced countless challenges, yet this human, he was not like any opponent she had faced. He was clever, unpredictable, and calm under pressure. The human continued walking, exploring. The bazaar and the Beastwoman followed silently. She did not need to speak. Her presence alone commanded attention, but there was no hostility now. She was learning, observing, and perhaps even respecting the human's resilience. By nightfall, the bazaar had transformed. Lanterns glowed with soft light, casting long shadows over the streets. Merchants began packing their goods, and travelers prepared for the evening rest. The human and the Beastwoman found themselves at a quieter part of the market, near a small fountain that glimmered with bioluminescent water. You survive everything, she said quietly, almost as a statement to herself. Nothing seems to stop you. You are strange. Human. Jalen looked at her calmly. Maybe, but it's what humans do. We face danger, we adapt, and we survive. That's how we last. That's how we thrive. She considered his words. In her world, strength had always been the ultimate measure of value. But here was a human, small and fragile in appearance, surviving where others could not, without relying on sheer power. His resilience, cleverness, and calm presence had earned him something even her strength could not force. Respect. For the first time? She gave a faint nod, almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. It was not friendship yet, but it was acknowledgement. Humans were not to be dismissed. Jalen smiled faintly. "You'll find humans are full of surprises." The Beast Woman's amber eyes glimmered in the lantern light. "Perhaps I will see more of these surprises." And so, as the twin moons rose above Zarkoth, bathing the bazaar in silver light, Jalen realized that the day had only begun. He had survived the Beast Woman's throw, impressed the crowd, and proven that humans could thrive where others might fail. The Beast Woman, once a symbol of unchallenged strength, was now curious, cautious, and perhaps even a little intrigued by this human. The encounter had shifted something fundamental, not just in her perception, but in the perception of everyone who had witnessed it. Humans, it seemed, were not simply fragile creatures. They were survivors. Jalen moved on through the quieting. Bazaar, aware that more challenges awaited, more surprises would appear, and more opportunities to prove his species' resilience would come. And somewhere behind him, the Beast Woman followed silently, learning, observing, and reconsidering what she thought she knew about strength, skill, and the unpredictable nature of humans. The Bazaar was far from safe, far from predictable, and far from ordinary. But for Jalen, it was a playground of curiosity, danger, and endless possibilities. And the day's events had only one clear message. Humans were not to be underestimated. With each careful step, he continued forward, ready for whatever the Bazaar and the galaxy would throw at him next. The next morning, the Bazaar of Zarkoth was already alive with activity. Traders were unpacking their goods, alien shoppers bustled through the alleys, and the scent of spices and roasted meats filled the air. Jalen moved carefully, observing everything, noting who sold what and which stalls were particularly valuable or dangerous. He had expected the Beast Woman to disappear after their encounter the previous day, her curiosity satisfied, or perhaps her pride mended. But she was already there, standing at a corner where two streets met, her tall frame casting a long shadow in the morning sun. Her amber eyes were fixed on him, scanning his every move. Jalen stopped, noticing her, and gave a small nod. She returned it, just barely, but there was no smile, no friendliness. Yet there was awareness, a cautious acknowledgement. The Bazaar was dangerous for a human alone. Even with his agility and cleverness, there were species stronger, faster, and more unpredictable than he was. And today, it seemed, he would not be alone. A sudden shout broke through the morning bustle. From a nearby stall, a group of young alien thieves darted out, carrying a crate of glowing artifacts. One of the merchants tried to chase them but stumbled, leaving the crate exposed. Instinctively, Jalen dashed forward, calculating the distance and trajectory. But before he could reach the thieves, a blur of bronze fur leapt beside him. The Beast Woman had anticipated his movement and joined him in the chase. Together they ran side by side, weaving through the crowded bazaar, drawing attention from every direction. The thieves were fast, but not as clever as Jalen. Using a combination of speed, agility, and sharp observation, he predicted their movements. The Beast Woman, powerful and imposing, relied on sheer strength and speed. They complemented each other naturally. He dodged obstacles and tripped the thieves with calculated maneuvers, while she blocked their escape and grabbed anyone trying to flee. Finally, the thieves reached a narrow alley with no way out. The Beast Woman stopped them with a low growl, her presence alone making the aliens hesitate. Jalen stepped forward, raising his hands calmly. "It's over. You won't escape, and no one will get hurt if you return the crate." The thieves, caught between the human's calm reasoning and the Beast Woman's imposing strength, surrendered. Slowly, they handed over the crate, muttering apologies. The merchant rushed over, eyes wide. "You both saved my goods! Incredible!" He looked at Jalen and then the Beast Woman, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. Jalen nodded politely. just using what I know." He glanced at the Beastwoman. "You make a good partner if you're willing to work together." She tilted her head, her muscles still tense, her amber eyes studying him. "Partnership? Strange. I usually do not work with others." Jalen smiled faintly. "Sometimes the smartest choice is to combine strengths. You have power I do not. I have other skills. Together we can handle more than alone." Her ears twitched, a subtle sign of consideration. "Perhaps humans are cleverer than I thought. Perhaps there is value in this arrangement." Before Jalen could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. A group of merchants were arguing loudly over a stolen artifact. Cries of "Thief!" and "Give it back!" echoed through the bazaar. Jalen glanced at the Beastwoman. "Shall we see what's happening?" She nodded slightly, and they moved, together blending into the chaos. At the center of the dispute was a large floating crystal, glowing with a bright blue light. It hovered in midair, tethered to a merchant by a magnetic field, until a small, nimble alien snatched it and darted into the crowd. "Follow it," Jalen muttered, already calculating possible escape routes. The Beastwoman leapt ahead, covering, ground in seconds, while Jalen used agility and clever thinking to cut off paths and anticipate the thief's moves. The pursuit wound through narrow alleys, across crowded streets, and past startled merchants and shoppers. Finally, the thief attempted to scale a wall, hoping to escape into the rooftops. Jalen quickly grabbed a nearby rope, creating a small trap. While the Beastwoman positioned herself to block any escape, the thief froze, realizing capture was inevitable. "You cannot win," Jalen said calmly. "Return the crystal. No one needs to get hurt." The Beastwoman growled softly, her stance intimidating but restrained. The thief, recognizing both strength and cleverness working together, reluctantly dropped the crystal. Jalen caught it mid-air, and the Beastwoman's presence ensured the thief did not try any sudden movements. The merchant rushed over, relief washing over him. "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you." Jalen smiled faintly. "No repayment needed. Just take care of your items." He handed the crystal back. The Beastwoman studied him quietly, her curiosity growing. "You think fast. You anticipate. You plan. Humans, strange, powerful, in ways unexpected." Jalen shrugged. "We survive. That's what humans do. Brute force is one way to handle danger, but thinking, predicting, adapting, that's often stronger." For the first time, the Beastwoman's expression softened slightly. Not in friendship, but in respect. Humans were not like other species she had faced. They were small, fragile in appearance, yet their intelligence and unpredictability made them formidable. "You, unusual," she said, almost as a statement. "Most would be overwhelmed. You are calm. You survive." Jalen nodded. "And humans don't just survive. We observe, learn, and sometimes teach others how to handle challenges." A small smile crept onto her face, just barely. "Perhaps I will learn from you as well." Their partnership, unspoken and fragile, began to form. The Beastwoman's pride had been challenged, her curiosity piqued. The human's cleverness had earned her respect, and now she was willing to see how far this collaboration could go. The rest of the day passed in a series of small challenges. Jalen and the Beastwoman navigated tricky crowds, helped lost children find their parents, prevented minor thefts, and even assisted a group of alien traders who had accidentally dropped their goods. With each incident, their coordination improved. Jalen learned to anticipate her movements, and she began to trust his instincts and quick thinking. By late afternoon, they paused near a quiet fountain, its bioluminescent water casting gentle light across the nearby stalls. Jalen leaned against a stone wall, catching his breath while the Beastwoman observed him silently. You survive everything, she said quietly, almost to herself. Nothing seems to stop you. Jalen smiled faintly. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about being adaptable, being able to think, to act, to respond. Humans are not the strongest, but we're hard to predict. That unpredictability, it can be our advantage. The Beastwoman considered his words. She had spent her life relying on strength, speed, and dominance. Yet here was a human, small, seemingly fragile, and yet able to navigate dangers that would have stopped others. His intelligence, calmness, and resilience were qualities she had never fully appreciated before. You, humans, strange, powerful, in ways not measured by muscle. Jalen nodded. Exactly. And when we work together, the combination of our strengths can handle almost anything. She studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. Perhaps we can be allies. Perhaps I will see what humans can truly do. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the bazaar. Traders began packing up for the evening, and the crowd thinned. But Jalen knew this was only the beginning. The day had tested both him and the Beastwoman in small ways, preparing them for larger challenges that awaited. For the first time, the Beastwoman saw humans not as fragile, creatures to be dismissed, but as unpredictable, clever, and resilient beings. And for the first time, Jalen realized that strength was not only about muscles, it was also about courage, intelligence, and the willingness to face danger without hesitation. The bond between them was still fragile, unspoken, and cautious, but it had begun. And in the dangerous, chaotic bazaar of Zarkoth, that bond might be the difference between survival and failure in the days to come. As the twin moons rose in the sky, bathing the city in silver light, Jalen and the Beastwoman prepared for the night. There would be more challenges, more surprises, and more tests of skill, strength, and wit. And as they stood side by side, even if neither admitted it, a mutual respect was growing. A respect that would form the foundation of their future adventures. Together. The Bazaar of Zarkoth was unpredictable, chaotic, and dangerous. But with intelligence, strength, and a willingness to learn from one another, even a human and a Beastwoman could navigate it, and perhaps even thrive. And for Jalen, that unpredictability was not a threat, it was an opportunity. The morning on Zarkoth began like any other, with the bazaar alive with color, sound, and motion. Merchants shouted over each other, selling exotic foods, glowing artifacts, and intricate gadgets from across the galaxy. Travelers, aliens, of every shape and size, moved carefully, navigating the crowded streets. But for Jalen and the Beastwoman, this morning held a tension neither could ignore. Word had spread through the bazaar. A group of notorious smugglers had arrived. They were known for causing chaos, stealing valuable goods, and even harming those who stood in their way. Traders had begun to barricade their stalls, while some chose to flee. The air was thick with unease, but Jalen saw opportunity, not just for survival, but for proving humanity's ingenuity once again. Trouble, he muttered, noticing the rumble of boots and the distant shouts. Smugglers, and they're moving fast. The Beastwoman's amber eyes narrowed, her muscles tensed, ready to act. I handle them with strength, she said. They will not escape. Jalen shook his head slightly, smiling. Strength is good, but we'll need a plan. They're clever, fast, and they know the bazaar well. She tilted her head, studying him. Plan? You have idea? I do, he said. We combine our skills. I can predict movements, set traps, distract. You handle direct confrontation. Together we can stop them without chaos spreading. The Beastwoman growled softly but nodded. Then we begin. They moved quickly through the crowded bazaar, Jalen scanning for escape routes, weak points, and potential obstacles. The Beastwoman followed silently, her imposing presence keeping the crowd at a cautious distance. Shoppers and merchants peeked from behind crates and stalls, whispering about the human and the Beastwoman working together, a partnership that few would have imagined possible. As they approached the center of the market, the smugglers came into view. 5 of them, masked and armed, carrying crates of stolen goods. Their speed was impressive, but their coordination was sloppy. Jalen's eyes calculated paths, angles, and timing in a matter of seconds. "There," he whispered, pointing to a narrow alley behind the smugglers. "If we can channel them through there, we can trap them." The Beastwoman nodded. "I block front. You manipulate paths?" "Exactly." Jalen ran ahead, moving with precision. He dropped small, subtle obstacles in the alleyways, knocking over crates and shifting carts to create narrow paths. The smugglers, focused on escape, stumbled over the obstacles, slowing their progress. The Beastwoman moved behind them, her shadow stretching over the alley like a living wall. One smuggler tried to break away, darting sideways, but Jalen was ready. He grabbed a coil of rope, swinging it low and tripping the thief. The Beastwoman lunged, grabbing him before he could recover. The others froze, realizing they were trapped. "You trapped?" she said in a low, rumbling voice. "No escape." Jalen stepped forward, hands raised calmly. "Surrender. Return the goods. No one needs to get hurt." The smugglers glanced at each other nervously, their confidence shaken. They had not expected such coordination, one focused on strength, one on strategy. The human's calm demeanor, combined with the Beastwoman's sheer power, created an unbeatable combination. Finally, one of the smugglers dropped his weapon. We surrender," he muttered. The others followed, handing over the crates. The merchants rushed forward, relief washing over their faces. "Thank you. I cannot believe you stopped them," one exclaimed. Jalen smiled faintly. "Just using what I know." He glanced at the Beastwoman. "We make a good team." She growled softly, but it was a sound of approval. "Good partnership, useful." The crowd around them murmured in amazement. Humans had always been underestimated, fragile in appearance and weak compared to many species. But here was one human, standing beside a Beastwoman, controlling a chaotic situation through wit, skill, and courage. The message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated, but the morning's challenges were not over. From a nearby alley, a loud crash echoed. A massive crate had fallen, sending a wave of mechanical pets and floating devices scattering into the street. One of the crates rolled dangerously close to a small group of children who screamed in fear. Without hesitation, Jalen sprinted forward, calculating the trajectory of the crate. He leapt, grabbing it just in time, redirecting it away from the children and into a safer position. The Beastwoman moved beside him, her large hands steadying other crates and preventing further accidents. Together they managed to restore order before anyone was harmed. "You think fast," she said quietly. "Predict, react, protect." Jalen shrugged. "It's what humans do. We adapt, we anticipate, we act. Strength is useful, but intelligence and quick thinking often save more lives." The Beastwoman's amber eyes glimmered thoughtfully. She had relied on strength for centuries, solving problems with sheer force. But the human's ability to analyze, predict, and act so calmly and effectively was impressive. As the day wore on, they continued to patrol the bazaar, responding to small incidents, helping merchants, and preventing minor thefts. The Beastwoman's initial curiosity had shifted to a deeper respect. The human's resilience, intelligence, and courage had earned her attention, and perhaps even admiration. By late afternoon, they found themselves near the edge of the bazaar, where the streets opened into a larger square. There, a new threat emerged, a massive gang of rogue traders, heavily armed and clearly looking for trouble. They had surrounded a valuable shipment of alien technology, ready to seize it by force. Jalen observed the situation carefully. "We'll need to split their attention," he whispered. "I'll create a diversion. You take the lead when they move. Timing is key." The Beastwoman nodded, muscles tensing. Ready. You lead?" He smiled faintly. "Together, we lead." Jalen ran forward, weaving through the crowd, throwing small gadgets and creating distractions that drew the rogue trader's attention. Alarms rang, sparks flew from overturned devices, and the traders were momentarily disoriented. At that moment, the Beastwoman leapt into the fray. Her sheer strength and speed stunned the attackers. She grabbed weapons, disarmed threats, and created a protective barrier around the shipment. Jalen moved alongside her, predicting movements, directing bystanders to safety, and intercepting any attackers who tried to escape the main chaos. The combination was seamless. Where brute force alone would have been messy and slow, Jalen's planning and anticipation multiplied the effectiveness of the Beastwoman's power. Together, they neutralized the threat quickly, efficiently, and without harming anyone unnecessarily. The merchants rushed forward, shouting their thanks and admiration. "You two! Incredible! I have never seen such teamwork." Jalen gave a small nod. "Just using what we have." He glanced at the Beastwoman. "Strength plus strategy can accomplish a lot." She growled softly, almost in agreement. "Humans, useful, clever, fast, thinkers, strength, not only measure of power." For the first time, a faint smile crossed her face. Not a smile of friendliness, but acknowledgement, respect, recognition of capability that even her species seldom granted. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky with red and orange streaks, Jalen and the Beastwoman stood amid the restored order of the Bazaar. The chaos of the day had passed, leaving behind a clear message. Humans were resilient, clever, and capable of extraordinary things when they combined intelligence with courage. The Beastwoman studied Jalen silently. Her pride, once absolute, now included a new element, respect for this small, clever species, and Jalen, observing her subtle approval, understood that he had not just survived, but earned the attention and acknowledgement of one of the strongest beings in the city. "This was useful," she said quietly. "You humans, strange, powerful, in ways not obvious." Jalen smiled faintly. "That's how humans often are. We survive, we adapt, and sometimes we show strength in unexpected ways." The bazaar slowly quieted as night approached. Lanterns glowed softly, and travelers began returning to their lodgings. But Jalen and the Beastwoman knew the day's events were only a beginning. Challenges would continue. Tests of skill, courage, and adaptability awaited them. And now, they faced them together, an unlikely partnership built on respect, intelligence, and the combination of human ingenuity and Beastwoman strength. As the twin moons rose in the sky, casting silver light across the city, Jalen realized something important. Humans were not simply survivors, they were catalysts. Their intelligence, resilience, and adaptability could inspire, challenge, and even change those around them. The Beastwoman had already learned this, and the Bazaar had witnessed it. Together they had faced danger, protected innocence, and demonstrated that strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, courage, and coordination were equally, if not more, powerful. And in the heart of Zarkoth's chaotic bazaar, an unexpected alliance had been forged, one that would shape the events to come, challenge expectations, and show the galaxy the extraordinary potential of humanity. Jalen and the Beastwoman stood side by side, ready for whatever the night or the universe might throw at them next. The night over Jarkoth's Bazaar was quiet, but an uneasy calm hung in the air. Lanterns glowed softly, casting shadows across the streets, and merchants were securing their stalls after a long day of chaos. The events of the past 2 days, the human surviving a Beastwoman throw, stopping thieves and outsmarting smugglers, had spread through the city like wildfire. Whispers of a clever, fearless human ran through every alley. Jalen moved cautiously, his eyes scanning every street, every corner. His instincts told him that the night was not as safe as it seemed. Humans might appear fragile, but danger often came when least expected, and he had learned to trust his gut. Beside him, the Beastwoman moved silently, muscles tensed, eyes glowing faintly amber in the moonlight. Her species had long relied on strength, instinct, and intimidation, but now she had learned something new. Humans had a different kind of power, unpredictable, clever, and resilient. And tonight, that power would be tested like never before. Distant roars shattered the quiet. From the shadowed alleyways, a massive gang of mercenaries emerged, their armor black, weapons gleaming, and faces hidden behind intimidating masks. They had been watching the bazaar, waiting for a chance to seize control of the city's trade. Their presence was undeniable, their intent clear: force, chaos, and dominance. Jalen observed them carefully. There were at least a dozen of them, far stronger and more numerous than any threat he had faced before. But he did not panic. Humans were adaptable. Humans were clever. And humans, he reminded himself, had survived far worse odds than this. "Looks like our day isn't over," he muttered. The Beastwoman's amber eyes narrowed. Many. Strong. Dangerous." "I know," Jalen replied calmly. "But we can stop them. Strength plus planning," she growled softly. "I trust you. Human. Plan. I follow." Together they moved forward, blending into the shadows of the narrow streets. Jalen studied the mercenaries' formation, noting weak points and gaps. He whispered instructions to the Beastwoman, who nodded silently, understanding the strategy without question. "First, we divide their attention," he said. "Then we force them into the alleyways. Narrow spaces work to our advantage. You handle the front, I handle the sides." The Beastwoman's tail twitched in anticipation. "Understood. Then, we attack?" Jalen smiled faintly. "Not attack. Recklessly. We trap them. We control the situation. That's how humans survive." With careful precision, Jalen set the plan in motion. Small distractions, overturned crates, sudden noises, clever placements of glowing devices drew the mercenaries' attention. The Beastwoman moved like a shadow, blocking paths, controlling space, and intimidating those who tried to escape. Jalen used his agility to dart between them, predicting movements, directing civilians to safety, and intercepting anyone trying to break free. Each move was calculated, each action precise. Humans were fragile, yes, but fragile did not mean helpless. One of the mercenaries lunged toward Jalen with a weapon, expecting an easy kill. Jalen rolled to the side, grabbed a discarded rod, and used it to redirect the attacker into a pile of crates. The noise and chaos caused confusion among the mercenaries, buying precious seconds. The Beastwoman struck next. Her speed, strength, and reach were unmatched. She disarmed one mercenary, grabbed another, and tossed him into a wall with controlled force. Not enough to kill, but enough to neutralize. The sight of a human calmly moving alongside a Beastwoman, coordinating every move, struck fear into the remaining mercenaries. They had expected chaos, not strategy. Jalen used the opportunity. He directed the mercenaries toward narrow alleyways, cutting off escape routes. His small size allowed him to move faster and more precisely than anyone else, positioning himself to block attacks and create traps. The Beastwoman followed, controlling the front line with her overwhelming presence. One mercenary tried to circle around and attack from behind. Jalen anticipated the move, grabbed a coil of rope, and tripped, sending him crashing into a stack of crates. Another lunged forward recklessly. She was ready. The Beastwoman's hand shot out, catching him mid-motion and tossing him aside safely. The remaining mercenaries were now trapped, surrounded by the clever maneuvers of the human and the raw strength of the Beastwoman. Their confidence faltered. Each calculated move of Jalen, combined with the Beastwoman's overwhelming presence, left no room for escape or surprise. Finally, Jalen stepped forward, voice calm but authoritative. "Surrender. Return to where you came from. No one else needs to be hurt." The mercenaries exchanged glances, fear and disbelief mixing on their faces. They had faced countless opponents before, but none had combined intelligence and strength so effectively. Slowly, one by one, they dropped their weapons. The Beastwoman's growl rumbled through the alley, a sound of approval. "Humans, powerful, clever, surprising." Jalen nodded. "It's not just about strength. It's about thinking, adapting, and using every advantage. Humans survive because we never give up, even when the odds are against us." The Bazaar's merchants emerged from their hiding places, cheering quietly, relieved that the threat was over. Civilians cautiously stepped into the streets looking at the human and the Beastwoman with awe. Word of their teamwork and victory would spread quickly, leaving an undeniable mark on Jarkoth. The Beastwoman studied Jalen silently, her pride softened by respect. "I underestimated humans, thought weak. Now, see strength in unexpected ways." Jalen smiled faintly. "Strength comes in many forms. Brute force is easy. Intelligence, resilience, adaptability. That is harder, but often stronger." She considered his words. For centuries, she had valued physical dominance above all else. But now, she understood that humans had something different, a combination of courage, cleverness, and adaptability that made them formidable in ways strength alone could not measure. "You teach me lesson," she admitted softly. "Strength, not always enough. Humans survive because think, act, adapt." Jalen nodded. "And humans never stop learning? That's why we last? That's why we thrive?" As the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the city, the bazaar slowly returned to calm. Merchants secured their stalls. Travelers resumed their paths, and the night air was filled with the quiet hum of the city at rest. Yet a new understanding had taken root, one that would change how the people of Jarkoth, and perhaps even the galaxy, viewed humans. Jalen and the Beastwoman stood side by side, their partnership solidified by action, trust, and mutual respect. They had faced overwhelming danger together, using a combination of intelligence, skill, and strength to protect the innocent and restore order. "You humans..." "Remarkable," the Beastwoman said quietly. "Not weak, not fragile, but clever, resilient, survive anything." Jalen smiled. "It's what we do. We adapt, we learn. And when we work together, we can face anything." The Beastwoman's amber eyes glimmered with approval. "Perhaps humans not only survive, but inspire, show others different kind of power." Jalen nodded. "Exactly. And this is only the beginning." For the first time, the Beastwoman allowed a faint, genuine smile to cross her face. Not of friendship, not yet, but acknowledgement, respect, and the realization that humans were far more than they appeared. The Bazaar of Zarkoth had witnessed something extraordinary. A human had faced incredible odds, survived where many would have failed, and shown that intelligence, courage, and adaptability could rival even the strongest species. The city, the merchants, and even the Beastwoman herself had learned that humans were not to be underestimated. And as Jalen looked out over the quiet streets, he realized that humanity's triumph was not just survival. It was recognition of what humans could achieve, the respect they could earn, and the influence they could have when they combined their minds, hearts, and courage. The Beastwoman stepped closer, her presence no longer intimidating, but protective. Tomorrow, we face unknown, but together, perhaps unstoppable. Jalen nodded. Yes, together. And in that moment, under the twin moons of Zarkoth, an unlikely partnership had not only survived, but triumphed. Humans had proven their worth, their cleverness, and their resilience. And the galaxy had taken note. Strength, speed, intelligence, and courage, all combined, had shown that humans were far more than fragile creatures. They were survivors, innovators, and perhaps the most unpredictable force the universe had ever encountered. The Bazaar slept peacefully under the silver moonlight. But the stories of that night would echo for generations. Jalen, the human, and the Beastwoman had changed everything. They had shown that true strength lay not just in muscle, but in heart, mind, and spirit. And so ended one chapter in the story of humanity's place in the galaxy. But the adventure, the surprises, and the challenges would continue. For humans, survival was never the end. It was only the beginning. The Bazaar had seen it all: clever humans, powerful allies, and impossible challenges overcome. And as the twin moons shone high, one truth was clear. Humanity had arrived. They were not just surviving, they were thriving, and they would never be underestimated again. Word count: 1,700 words.